Snow muffles sound, but in Minnesota, silence doesn't always mean safety. Beneath the frozen lakes, along the quiet roads, and inside abandoned halls, the state holds secrets that refuse to stay buried. Here, whispers drift across icy fields, footsteps echo in empty theaters, and the dead walk where the living dare not linger. Tonight, we'll journey through Minnesota's most haunted places where winter isn't the only thing that lingers in the air. Stay close, because the snow might hide tracks, but it never hides the truth. 1. Lakeview Cemetery, Boole, Minnesota. Cemeteries are always places of uneasy silence. But Lakeview Cemetery in Boole carries an atmosphere darker than most. Locals warn that the dead here are restless, and the living who linger too long may not leave unchanged. The cemetery lies on a quiet hillside, rows of headstones tilting against the wind, their engravings faded by time. But what chills visitors most isn't what they see, it's what they feel. The moment you step past the gates, the air grows thick and oppressive, as though dozens of unseen eyes are watching. One of the most infamous legends is that of a glowing red-eyed figure seen wandering the graves. Witnesses describe it as tall, cloaked in shadow, moving without sound. It vanishes into the tree line, only to reappear behind you when you least expect it. Some say it isn't human at all, but something older, darker, a guardian of the restless dead. Stranger still, some visitors report voices rising from the ground itself, soft, muffled cries, as though those buried beneath were still calling out. On certain nights, when the fog rolls in thick, people claim the graves shift outlines of figures standing between the stones, fading as quickly as they come. One story tells of a group of teenagers daring each other to spend the night. By dawn, one refused to speak of what he'd seen. His hair turned shock white. He never returned to the cemetery, and to this day, avoids even driving by it. Lakeview Cemetery is more than a resting place. It's a reminder not everything that falls silent in Minnesota stays that way. 2. The Landmark Center, St. Paul, Minnesota. Standing tall in St. Paul's downtown, the Landmark Center is a masterpiece of Romanesque architecture and a graveyard of secrets. Once a federal courthouse and post office, it saw trials of gangsters, bootleggers, and men who would never walk free again. Some of them, it seems, never left. Security guards report hearing footsteps pacing the marble halls long after closing, echoing as though dozens of people were marching in unison. Elevator doors open and close without cause, their interior lights flickering as though inviting someone inside. One of the most infamous ghosts is that of a gangster said to have died during a trial here. Witnesses describe seeing him near the old courtrooms, leaning casually against the wall in a dark suit, smiling before disappearing into thin air. Others speak of a woman in old-fashioned dress drifting through the ballroom, her presence accompanied by a chill that sinks deep into your bones. But the most unsettling reports come from the basement, where holding cells once kept prisoners before trial. People say you can still hear the rattling of chains, soft moans of despair, and the faint, metallic scent of blood. Even in the daylight, the Landmark Center feels heavy, as though the building remembers everything every secret, every sentence, every final breath. 3. Greyhound Bus Museum, Hibbing, Minnesota. At first glance, the Greyhound Bus Museum seems harmless, even kitschy, a tribute to the company that began in Hibbing in 1914. Rows of restored buses sit like sleeping giants, polished and quiet. But spend enough time inside, and you'll understand why some refuse to return. Visitors describe hearing footsteps echoing across the exhibit floor, even when they stand alone. The buses themselves seem alive, with doors opening and closing by themselves, headlights flickering in the dark. Some guests have claimed to hear the growl of engines turning over, though every bus remains silent and still. One chilling story involves a group touring late in the evening. They boarded one of the older buses, laughing until they realized someone else was already seated. A man in a dark suit, his head bowed, sat motionless at the back. When they blinked, he was gone. The only trace left was a lingering smell of exhaust and the sensation of being watched. Staff have spoken of cold drafts that sweep through certain buses and shadows flickering across the windows as though passengers were still boarding, still waiting to depart. Some wonder if the spirits tied to these buses are restless travelers, souls who never reached their destination. The museum stands as a monument to movement and progress, but for some, it is also a terminal for the dead, where the journey never ends. 4. St. James Hotel, Red Wing, Minnesota. The St. James Hotel is the kind of place that wears its history on its walls. Ornate Victorian decor, velvet drapes, and chandeliers that catch the dim light. Built in 1875, it was a symbol of luxury in the river town of Red Wing. But beneath the polished charm lies something darker. Guests report being awakened in the dead of night by the sound of soft footsteps outside their doors, only to find the hallway empty. Some hear children laughing and running down the corridors, though the floorboards remain still and silent. The air turns icy cold at random, heavy enough to see your own breath. One particular spirit is known simply as Clara, believed to be a chambermaid who once worked at the hotel. She appears as a faint figure in long skirts, quietly moving through rooms, sometimes adjusting the bed sheets as though tending to guests long gone. But her presence isn't comforting. Witnesses describe feeling an overwhelming sadness when she passes, as though she carries her own unfinished sorrow. The staff whisper of an older man who haunts the upper floors, a shadowed figure who lingers near the windows overlooking the Mississippi River. He's said to vanish when approached, leaving only the faint scent of cigar smoke behind. Would you dare spend a night in the St. James, knowing you might wake up to find someone else in the room, someone who was never alive to begin with? 5. Glensheen Mansion, Duluth, Minnesota. Perched on the edge of Lake Superior, Glensheen Mansion looks like a dream of Gilded Age wealth, but inside, the echoes of a brutal murder still stain its halls. In 1977, heiress Elizabeth Congdon was smothered in her bed, and her nurse was bludgeoned to death on the staircase. Though the case shocked the nation, the spirits of Glensheen never seemed to find peace. Tour guides whisper of cold spots that bloom without reason, footsteps pacing upstairs when the house is empty, and chandeliers swaying without a draft. Visitors have caught the faint scent of perfume, Congdon's lingering in the rooms she once cherished. But the most chilling reports come from the staircase where the nurse was killed. Guests feel watched, as though someone is standing just behind them. Some have felt hands press against their back, urging them to stumble forward, down into the darkness. Windows facing the lake sometimes show reflections that don't match reality. A figure in old-fashioned nightclothes, staring out as though waiting for someone. Others claim to hear soft weeping in the dead of night, echoing through the ornate halls. The mansion's beauty lures thousands of visitors every year. But ask the staff, and they'll tell you it's not just history that lingers at Glensheen. It's grief, it's rage, and it never truly sleeps. 6. The Soap Factory, Minneapolis, Minnesota. If there's one place in Minnesota that radiates dread, it's the soap factory. Built in the 1880s as an industrial warehouse, it later became an art gallery. But the shift in purpose didn't erase its sinister past. Rumors swirl that the factory once processed animal remains, and perhaps human ones. Visitors describe the building as unbearably oppressive. The basement, in particular, feels like stepping into a grave. Paranormal investigators have reported physical attacks, scratches, sudden nausea, even the sensation of being choked. One photographer claimed her camera refused to work inside, yet when she left, it displayed dozens of blurry faces she hadn't taken. During haunted house events staged at the gallery, actors themselves became frightened. They spoke of being touched, pushed, and whispered to in voices that didn't belong to anyone on the payroll. One described seeing a man in Victorian clothing wandering backstage, his face pale, his eyes burning red in the dark. Some locals believe the soap factory isn't just haunted, it's a portal, a place where the veil between the living and the dead has worn dangerously thin. If you listen long enough in the basement, you'll hear it, a deep, guttural growl, something not entirely human. And once you hear it, you never forget it. 7. First Avenue Nightclub, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Music still rattles the walls of First Avenue, Minneapolis's most famous nightclub, but some say the echoes come from more than just speakers. Once a bus station in the 1930s, the building became a club that hosted legends like Prince, but it has also collected shadows of tragedy. Security guards have reported seeing a figure in the women's bathroom, a young woman with hollow eyes, believed to be the ghost of someone who took her life there in the 1940s. Patrons have fled in terror after hearing stalls slam shut one by one, even when they stood alone. The dance floor itself carries a strange energy. Some describe feeling drained, as if something pulls the life out of them. Others have caught glimpses of shadowy figures swaying to music only they can hear. One bartender swore she saw an entire crowd of people dancing long after closing, but when she blinked, the floor was empty. The stage, too, has its watchers. Musicians report feeling eyes on them. Even during rehearsals in an empty club, lights flicker at impossible times. Microphones hiss with whispers, and some swear they hear applause slow, mocking, and meant for no one. Even now, the living come for the music, but the dead, they never left. 8. Fergus Falls State Hospital, Fergus Falls, Minnesota. There's something about abandoned asylums that draws the bravest and terrifies everyone else. The Fergus Falls State Hospital, with its looming red brick towers and endless hallways, is one of the largest in the country. Opened in 1890, it was designed to be a place of healing. But like so many institutions of its time, it quickly became a warehouse of despair. Patients endured crude treatments, electroshock, lobotomies, and years of isolation. Many died within these walls, their names lost to history. Now, the silence is broken by whispers in the corridors, doors slamming without cause, and windows rattling, though the air is still. Explorers who sneak inside tell of a woman in a hospital gown, wandering the halls with a hollow stare, vanishing before they can approach. Others describe hearing the rolling wheels of a gurney being pushed down a hallway, even though the building has been abandoned for decades. The scent of antiseptic still hangs in certain rooms, sharp and choking, as though the treatments never stopped. Some claim the spirits here are not just trapped, but angry. One group of paranormal investigators reported being scratched, their equipment drained of power, the moment they entered the old treatment wing. The deeper you go, the more you feel it, as though the building itself is alive, feeding on your fear. Would you walk those halls alone, knowing every shadow might not be yours? 9. Palmer House Hotel, Sauk Center, Minnesota. On the surface, the Palmer House Hotel looks like a quaint relic of Minnesota's past warm brick walls, a classic facade, and an inviting lobby. But those who spend the night quickly learn this is no ordinary inn. Built in 1901 on the ashes of a former brothel that burned to the ground, the hotel has soaked up more than a century of restless spirits. Guests speak of Room 11, where a man is said to have taken his own life. His heavy footsteps can still be heard pacing endlessly, as if he never found peace. In another room, an unseen child giggles, bouncing a ball that no one can find. The thump, thump, thump against the wooden floor has driven guests to check out early, pale and shaken. The bar is no safer. Staff have seen glasses fly from shelves with violent force, shattering across the floor when no one was nearby. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the walls, following staff late at night. One paranormal investigator swore she saw a man in a bowler hat watching from the corner, only to realize the corner was empty. Locals say once you stay at the Palmer House, it stays with you. People report hearing whispers long after they've checked out, as though the spirits followed them home. Could it be the hotel itself that's cursed, or the land beneath it, still holding on to the tragedies that came before? 10. The Wabasha Street Caves, St. Paul, Minnesota. Imagine walking into a dimly lit cave, the stone walls sweating with cold, the echo of dripping water following you deeper inside. The Wabasha Street Caves in St. Paul are no ordinary caverns. They once served as speakeasies during Prohibition, echoing with the laughter of gangsters and the clink of forbidden glasses. But the laughter ended in gunfire. According to local legend, 3 men were executed here during a mob dispute. Their bodies vanished, never recorded in police reports, as though the cave itself swallowed them whole. Tour guides whisper that shadows still move across the dance floor, even when no one is inside. Some visitors claim to hear big band music playing faintly in the darkness, fading just before the sound of gunfire cracks through the silence. Step too close to the back tunnels, and you may feel a hand brush against your shoulder, cold and deliberate. The scent of cigar smoke lingers, though smoking hasn't been allowed here for decades. One woman reported being shoved against the wall by something she couldn't see, her scream drowned out by phantom jazz. Would you dare stand alone in those caves after midnight, waiting to hear the final song? Many don't stay long enough to find out. And so, from haunted hotels to cursed caves, from ghostly mansions to restless cemeteries, Minnesota reveals itself as a land where winter's silence hides more than snow. These places linger in shadow, waiting for those bold enough or foolish enough to step inside. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this chilling journey, don't forget to like, comment with your favorite haunted location, and subscribe for more weekly videos from the shadows.